Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, December 17th. We are joined by Josh Molina, multi-platform journalist and international man of mystery, and Nick Welsh, the top columnist in Santa Barbara, as voted by the readers of his paper for the last 2 years. But he's not close to threatening Starshine Rochelle's Joe DiMaggio-like streak of 19 in a row. And in a minute or so, probably so, we'll be joined by Jade Martinez-Pogue as well. Let's start at City Hall. Josh, you had the acting interim police chief, Barney Malekian, on your podcast this week. And amid all of the banter back and forth, there was actually a nugget of news where he is very strongly positioning that he wants there to be police officers on the new, whatever you want to call it, post-formation commission on commission civilian review board. Why?
Are you taking a stab at my format, Jerry? You don't like the conversational tone?
Not at all, Josh. You know me. There's never anything bitter. There's never any snark. This is the no snark zone, actually.
Okay. Don't cancel me. Okay. Yes. Amid the very, the rapport that I had with the police chief in our conversation, he said, hey, law enforcement should have a seat at the table when it comes to making decisions about the civilian review system. And he was very direct. He was blunt. He said, why wouldn't you want that when you're talking about these issues of public safety and law enforcement? Wouldn't you want to talk to people who do it? And so he's very clear, very direct. I guess there's been some internal tension regarding this, and Malekian is well respected. He's not Lori Lunow. He's somebody who can talk to sort of everybody and has got this national reputation as being sort of like this level-headed, moderate.
And he's worked on, he's really worked on these issues at a very, well, for the Obama administration. He was the head of one of those commissions. So, what's going on with the commission? Are they against this idea of having cops on, or are they so far to the left that
they are, at this point, they haven't formally and officially decided, I don't think yet, but there was a meeting last week where maybe they did, where the debate was tight, but it came down on the side. We don't want anybody currently in law enforcement, anybody who was previously in law enforcement. That would apply to people in, I believe, probation. One of the commissioners is one of the people in this commission is a former Oakland police officer, an African-American. One of the members of the commission is a former probation officer, Mary O'Gorman. I understand she has since or before, resigned from the commission.
Mary O'Gorman has resigned? There's news.
3 people have left the commission, and within the commission itself, there's been, a sort of intense debate. On one hand, the argument is we are an oversight board, and we want people in the community to feel comfortable coming to us, not feeling like they're going to be swayed by, the police officers on the board, and that they're or the law enforcement people on the board, and that they will get a better hearing. That's sort of one argument. The other argument is, who knows how the police departments work better than people in law enforcement. And Mary O'Gorman, former probation officer, certainly has been holding law enforcement.
Do we know if she quit over this issue?
She has not officially said, why she has quit, but, I think that there are people on the commission, on this board, who are worried that it is going to appear anti-cop. And certainly that Barney Malekian and Sean Hill, who is the other representative who showed up, Lieutenant Sean Hill, they're about as reform-minded as police law enforcement people that you're going to find who are open to the idea of a
Josh,
civilian review board.
what were you going to say?
But they don't
I'll
want
just,
they don't want it to be an anti-cop
Yeah.
steamroller.
Yeah.
And that's what they're concerned about.
yeah. According to my sources, that's exactly why Mary O'Gorman resigned, this feeling that it can't be this anti-cop sort of sentiment. Barney told me you'd be like starting a newspaper and not having journalists involved. And I said,
I know people who've done that.
I said, sounds like the Mission and State story to me, but I digress. So, I mean, that's a big deal. They're having these meetings. They hired a consultant. They're going to be talking about all of this. But, I think part of the city strategy, quite honestly, was to create this formation commission, kind of punt it, take a long time, let them deal with these things. And it was a way to sort of put things off. I mean, we are a year and a half removed from the George Floyd murder, and we're talking about things that, again, could have been talked about a lot sooner.
The world has changed. I mean, with this spike in murders nationally, and the kind of these store invasion crimes that we've seen in the Bay Area and elsewhere. You had the mayor, the left wing, left of Fidel Castro, mayor of San Francisco, denouncing crime this week and calling for more cops and a crackdown and everything. The moment shifted, and I don't know if the words got to the commission yet, but I think Barney's onto something here. And the other thing is,
the moment has shifted. I think that inside City Hall, the question is, would the new council, particularly with Randy Rouse coming in, be willing to support anything that the commission would feel comfortable forwarding on to them? So. I think the council would definitely feel a lot more comfortable if there was some law enforcement presence on there. I mean, one of the things Mary O'Gorman told me, she said, if you look at Berkeley and if you look at Oakland and their rules and who they exclude, Santa Barbara's is by far the most exclusive in terms of the law enforcement perspective. On the flip side, they are open to having people on the board who have, experience on the other end of the criminal justice system, having been accused and convicted of crimes. And so, it's like if you're going to have one, you should have the other. But that.
All right, let me welcome in our Prague bureau chief, Jade Martinez-Pogue from Newshawk. Jade, how are you doing? Thanks for making the time to come in. We've just been talking about the police commission, but we usually start with COVID, but we put that off in respect to you. So give us the 2-minute summary of where we are in COVID, which seems to be kind of scary.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, we actually got a presentation from our public health director, Vanda Reynoso, and our officer, Henning Anzord, which was kind of the first time they talked about the Omicron variant.
How are you pronouncing that?
I say Omicron. I still don't know if that's true or not, but
it's good enough for this show.
No, I think that's right.
Okay.
I've got a couple conservative friends who switch the words around and call it moronic, but I digress.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, the president of the United States calls it Omicron, so that it could be worse. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jade. I apologize for these guys. They're
so yeah, there wasn't. They didn't give any local data about that variant here, but Anzorg did say that it spreads almost like twice as fast as the Delta variant, which the Delta spread twice as fast as the original Alpha, and we all saw the huge surge that Delta caused. But he said we won't probably see the effect of Omicron locally probably until like January, February, 2 months from now, because we trail the UK by about 6 to 8 weeks, and they're now just starting to see the of it.
This isn't going to cancel the Super Bowl in LA, is it?
I don't know. I honestly am curious to see if they.
The Rams are going, and I'm going to be really disappointed if
Rams
we
are
have another
going.
shutdown.
Yeah, in your dreams. It did cancel the Bishop at Santa Barbara High game on Saturday, more importantly. But yeah, I mean, but we do have, a relatively large number of people vaccinated. We don't know yet whether the vaccination and the booster is good against this variant.
Well, Anzorg did say, so with Delta, you needed the second dose from the original 2-dose series to be, fully protected. And they're saying with Omicron, you need the booster dose. So just the first original series probably won't cut it.
And do we know what percentage of people have had the booster too? That's got to be under 50, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know what percentage. I do remember as of, I think, Tuesday, so I haven't checked recently, but as of Tuesday, around 85,000 have been administered in our county. So I want to say, actually, I actually can't
That's
say
not very much.
percentage.
That's
I
only
wouldn't
like
know.
15 or 20%. And Josh, the school board, the Santa Barbara Unified is sending testing kits home with every student, I hear. I read in the Santa Barbara Independent. Have you?
I think I saw that email as well. I'm sort of, okay, that's cool. That's fine. I mean, I don't know
Well,
too
how are they
much
going to
about
know
that.
if anybody's using it, for one thing? And I don't know. I don't know. Nick, you want to weigh in here on the virus at all?
Yeah, no, the thing that really struck me this week was that the sheriff's department remains stuck in sort of this you can't make me zone, where 135 of the patrol deputies are not vaccinated and are not getting tested. And they say they are not refusing, don't use the word refuse, we are not refusing, but we are concerned where that information might go. And which just seems like such a made up excuse. But it's just sort of striking at this time, our hospital rooms are filling up faster than they were before. Our ICUs are filling up faster than we were before. We're not in the freak out mode. We're not near the red zone, but it's going in the wrong direction at the wrong time. As we go into Christmas vacation, the holidays, New Year's, all this kind of stuff, everybody's gonna be out and about. You got the Omicron, which is supposedly way more infectious, though fortunately, allegedly not as deadly. So you have law enforcement sort of sitting on their hands saying, "You can't make me." It just sends the wrong message.
Yeah, and Jade, so what was Ansorg's bottom line? Just everybody ought to go out and get the booster. I mean, it's available, right? I mean, it's not like
Yeah,
scarce.
get the booster, get tested before and after any holiday gatherings. Just the basic stuff. He didn't tell anyone not to travel. There's no gathering restrictions or anything.
But we've got the indoor mask mandate
yeah,
back
we do.
now as well. All right. Well, eventually, I don't know what's gonna. We have to live with this thing, I guess. All right, let's double back real quick where we were at City Hall. Josh, just we got an update on the Great Economic Development Plan, for which the City Council hired a economic development manager after much fuss. And gosh, it was really stunning and extremely specific what he had to say, huh?
Well, I'm going to say what everyone else says, but apparently no one's telling it to Jason Harris. He doesn't make any sense. He speaks in really, really serious bureaucratic jargon and says the same words over and over, and they sound like he's saying something. But if you break it down, we got a report, a 6-month update on economic development, and most of it's to come. Some of it's pending, some of it's in progress. One thing was done, which was training for businesses. Santa Barbara, I don't know what the deal is, but they're just in this state of they're just real sluggish. They're really slow. I think they feel like they They opened up outdoor dining really quickly. So everything else now from this point on could take forever. I've listened to hundreds of these types of presentations in 21 years, and I've never heard anything this bureaucratic and jargony, and that includes the Bay Area and San Diego. I mean, I don't understand. I don't know if Nick saw it or not, but it was just like, you're not saying anything, and there's been no progress. It was a 7-minute
Did
presentation.
anybody on the council say anything about it?
Yeah, it was a 7-minute presentation where if you actually look at what he said, he probably said about 2 minutes of stuff. Kristen Sneddon asked about more details in a future report in the annual update.
She's running for mayor.
For mayor, I don't know, but I will say in the last couple meetings, she's really stepped it up. It's a whole new Kristen Sneddon. Ever since she trashed Barrett Reed in that interview, I don't know what, I mean, she's like a whole new person. She's running the council the last 2 meetings. It's very clear. So I just think that she asked some questions, Eric Friedman asked some questions, and it was just bizarre. I don't understand. I guess this is what people say when they criticize government is, why are you allowed to move at this sluggish pace when business has to move much faster? And I mean, the reason is they're guaranteed their income, they're guaranteed their pay, so they don't work quick. I don't know if Nick saw the meeting, but wow, was it a doozy?
I missed it.
Okay.
Sounds like it was a good one to miss. And then the other thing, Josh, that came out of the meeting was, this issue that everybody wants to forget about, the pension liability, $35 million in unfunded pension liabilities. So
Yeah, no, that was confusing, but only because that topic is legitimately confusing. But I will say that is it Keith DeMartini or the finance director for the city of Santa Barbara made pensions sound so much clearer than Jason Harris did economic development, and pensions are complicated. Santa Barbara has a $344 million pension liability. People are living longer. Investments in CalPERS are not at the numbers they were back when the cities gave these hefty pension benefits to public safety, and then the SEIU, the labor, the classified workers, then they got a boost as well. So they got these boosts after Greg Davis signed the state bill. It was 1999, and prison guards, parks and recreation, or park rangers, employees, everybody got a great benefits. The economy tanked in 2008. Well, we're still stuck with the pension. These are defined benefits. So Santa Barbara's trying to figure out what are we going to do? And they really don't have any options other than charging employees more, investing themselves in the Section 115 fund, or issuing bonds. And so there's a lot of conversations about this. This was at the finance committee, and he gave two guys gave a presentation from the finance department and a consultant. And when they were done, it was sort of like Megan Harmon said, she blamed it on you, Jerry. She blamed it on the baby boomers.
Lamest comment I have
And
ever heard Megan Harmon.
It's your fault.
Oh, it's the baby boomers.
Well, are you impersonating a female, Jerry? Oh my
No,
goodness, how could you do that?
Not
That's
at all.
that's
would
over the
be-
line here on
that
this
would be
show.
your parents, Megan, who are responsible for you being here. Why don't we start with that? But be that as it may, what Megan ought to look at is the kind of campaign contributions that she's taking from City Hall employees, because that's why we have pensions. We do have a 2-tier system, and they have made some modest reforms, but why not go to a 3-tier system and just, really whack back on that, because it's an ongoing problem that just sort of multiplies.
What? Jerry, these are public servants who work 4 days a week and 10 hours a day and have every other Friday off. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, enough. Let's talk about some county stuff. Jade, you wrote about the cannabis revenues being disappointingly low, 17% less, I believe, than the first quarter, 25% lower. Did I miss the part in your story where Das Williams apologized to the county for transforming our economy into a cannabis economy and putting all his chips on that? Well, Das must have said that, right?
I think actually an interesting if he did, that's over. I don't remember, but an interesting point that I think Supervisor Lavanino was making was that this is the second quarter that the cannabis revenues were lower than expected after multiple quarters of increasing revenues. And Lavanino just said, we kind of knew this going in when we first implemented our cannabis program. It's obviously going to be lucrative, but it's not just going to skyrocket year after year after year. And so it's kind of balancing out right now. They talked about there's an oversupply of cannabis and
What a shock.
Yeah.
We put the entire county under cultivation and now there's too much. Oh my goodness. Who could have foreseen such a thing?
Jerry, okay, I know you want to wet your pants about this, but I mean, the reality
is
they brought in $3 million as opposed to $5 million. It's still more than it was before.
It's a pittance.
The overproduction is a statewide issue. And we're growing something like 10 times more pot than we can grow. And we have 1/10 as many retail outlets as we need. And so if you want to make the money.
That's the problem. More retail outlets. Okay. I didn't know. Where's Anthony Wagner when you need him? Huh?
So Jerry, here's the deal. Your city, San Francisco, or your county, San Francisco, say, because we want this industry to thrive, we're going to forego any of the taxes that you were due, and we're going to let you off the hook so that your industry can thrive. In Santa Barbara, instead, they're going to go to the state and say, hey, you guys need to lay off on the state taxes so that we can collect ours. But what is happening is the black market is growing because why are you going to take, if the prices are so low, you can't afford to pay the taxes and all the costs of doing it legal. So people are running to the black market.
Yeah. Well, here is the fact. The county of Santa Barbara has made an historic blunder of
cataclysmic proportions. Go ahead, Jerry.
Led by Das Williams, leading Stephen Lavanino around by the nose. And in 25 to 50 years, we're still going to be paying the price for this. And thank you very much, Das Williams. That being said, yes, $3 million. Holy cow. And how big of a budget?
Okay, Jerry, last year it was 16 or 17 million bucks.
It's you know what it is? It's the state lottery. The state lottery.
No, actually, the state lottery, we don't get any of that money. Here we get 16 or 17 million.
It's a joke. For the amount of enforcement that we have to do. Now you have legal guys, as you point out in your story, going on the black market to sell illegally. How much enforcement was there last quarter? Because that was in the report too.
Yeah.
And the czar, the cannabis czar, couldn't even say whether anybody was prosecuted for it. It's a joke.
I have heard too. There was like 300 out of 350 something complaints were like odor complaints in the Carpinteria area, and the staff report was really general, like this is what staff does when they respond to an odor complaint, and this is the process. And I have heard from people that have made odor complaints that nothing has ever happened. They've never been followed back up with or anything like that.
So if we have 10 times the supply, if we had only 1/10 the supply, probably we would have 1/10 of the odor complaints. You agree with that, Nick?
No.
I'd like to remind you, Jerry, that Das Williams was reelected by his voters and constituents. So I'm not sure if you're poking at a problem that isn't quite as big as you make it out to be. And what are you going to do when Das Williams is the next member of Congress? What are you going to do then?
I will be so glad to get him out of here. You get Washington, where he'll be in the minority, in the permanent minority, and he can't do the kind of damage that he has. All right, Nick, in your endless quest to prove that government does good things, you actually stumbled upon one this week. with the housing authority's new project at Veracruz Park. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Veracruz Park, better known as Needle Park, right across the street from the Coda Street parking lot, where we have the farmers market. There was some fancy schmancy housing project that had been approved, 15 units of high-end deluxe housing. It was an AUD, average unit density, where the city allows great bonuses. And apparently they got all the permits they needed, or almost, but they just said to hell with it. We can't deal with the city of Santa Barbara anymore, or maybe they're financing. We don't know exactly what happened, but they said, we're out of here. The housing authority swooped in and with $2 million from City Hall, bought the land, and is now building 28 units of real capital A affordable housing for people who would otherwise be on the streets. And that should be open in about a year and a half.
Do we have any idea what the rents are? Or are they all subsidized, or?
They're all subsidized.
Yeah. No. Well, I thought, Josh, the interesting point in Nick's piece was pointing out that, it's a much different strategy than the city has attempted under the AUD ordinance, to kind of try to finesse these things into being, and affordable units into being. And it's been pretty much of a failure. A lot of rentals, but none of them affordable. But here, you just have the housing authority build it. What's wrong with that? That seems to make a lot more sense than these endless permutations they're doing with the AUD.
Well, it makes more sense because they're not going to jack up the rents like the property owners and landlords will to the market rate, but it's hard for them to find the funding to do this. Like the housing authority still needs to get the money to buy this. But Nick, does this mean they're getting rid of the trapeze place? Is it in that spot?
I think that is a separate parcel, and
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen there. But to go to your point, Jerry, or your question, the housing authority is getting $10 million in tax exempt bond. So they can sell tax breaks for worth $10 million, and they get that approved by the state, which gets it approved in turn by the feds.
I mean, there's a lot of money there in the state, particularly right now with this huge surplus, a lot of money for housing, and Biden's,
This is the time to do it for sure. But the city can't do that. The city can only, because we got rid of the redevelopment agency several years ago. The city doesn't have any money to put in now to say, let's build some affordable housing. So they have to go to the developers and say, if we put enough cherries on top and enough whipped cream, will you build an ice cream sundae? And they don't have enough cherries.
But when you strip it all away, hasn't the impact of the AUD program has been to increase land values, to drive up rents, to do, in fact, just the opposite of what it was supposed to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
The housing authority, Rob Fredericks, has said that it's harder for them now to compete to buy these pieces of land because they're competing with the developers who are doing it to build the market rate units. So that's another side effect of that program.
Yes, the law of unintended
So
consequences.
are you trying to argue that why bother trying because it's just going to backfire anyway?
Well, if
Are
it's
you a
backfiring,
utilitarian?
yes, because you're making the problem worse. I mean, it makes no sense to me. These social engineering projects, which Megan Harmon and other progressive just love,
Man,
Well, you turned on Megan so bad, Jerry.
Has her baby been born? Am I allowed to ask? Has her baby been born? Is she? Yes? No?
Not as of this moment that I know of, as of this recording.
I imagine you got the scoop on that, Josh, huh? Did you?
Jerry, maybe we can use, we're on baby watch at Newshawk. Yes. Maybe we should use the cannabis revenue, Jerry, to build more housing. Would that make you happy?
Well, that would make more sense than yes, having to pay the sheriff to go out and bust everybody. I mean, it's just goofy. The whole thing's goofy. All right, let's double back on the redistricting. Jade, is that done now? Are the the 5 districts set in stone?
I believe so. Yeah, they adopted the final map. I want to say last week, but maybe it was the beginning of this
I
week.
think it was the
Okay,
beginning
yeah.
of this, yeah,
Beginning of this week.
yeah. And so they basically adopted the Lanny Ebenstein plan, did they not? As featured on Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina, Lanny explained. And the big deal is what? Moving IV from the 3rd district to the 2nd district. So that
Yeah.
the 3rd district, is it still a swing district? Is it a conservative district? Do we know?
I don't personally know like the voting trends of that area, but I do remember I only watched one of the redistricting meetings. They're really long, like 8 hours.
But
I do
really
remember-
interesting.
they wanted to, I think part of the reasoning of putting IV in the 2nd district was to have one district with both of the higher education. So you have SBCC and UCSB in the same district. As far as how it's going to impact the votes of the Board of Supervisors, I have no idea. Josh or Nick, you might know.
Nick,
more.
who are the winners and losers of this?
Well, I think, the big push by the conservatives and people living in the San Ynez Valley and in North County, they were very clear what they wanted, and they wanted Isla Vista and UCSB out of the 3rd and into the 2nd. And that way, they felt they had a fighting chance at getting the 3rd district. If you look at the 3rd district since 1972, when 18-year-olds got the right to vote, I think conservative candidate, Republican candidates have served for 10 years. And it's been increasingly, hard for the liberals to maintain control, but they have done so fairly effectively. And so that was the big victory. And I gave that in this week's column to Bob Nelson, County Supervisor, who was very involved in forming the committee Reason in Government, which has a wonderful acronym RIG, to put it on the ballot in the first place. And so they won. I would say Steve Lavanino kind of is a big winner because there were 100 maps. The last one made a very determined point to get him out of his own district. He was going to have to move to win. I am told that was a very deliberate effort by.
It was deliberate. It
Cause.
wasn't so it's not accidental.
It wasn't just accidental. It was on purpose. It was. You're a nice guy, but we don't like your politics, white man. And we're gonna.
Are you accusing Doss of doing
No.
that behind? Is that what you said? Who did you say?
No, I didn't say cause, not
Cause. Oh, okay. All right.
And
It'll
That's the
be
last way.
it'll be a hot day or a cold day in hell when Nick accuses Doss of anything like that.
I would just tell you, Jerry, as a matter of fact, Doss has told Steve Lavanino, if I ever have to speak at your funeral, I will say that you were the mojo that made this board work. And Steve took whole comfort in that in the moment, because at that point, he had not been restored to his seat. His district lines hadn't been redrawn.
Yeah, that seems like a bit of an untold story about what the machinations on that.
Well,
And
I think that
we're probably the only people that are interested in it, but
The liberals and the Democrats and the progressives were not of a unified approach, whereas the conservatives were.
all right. So the question then becomes, well, Joan Hartman, she is moderate enough to prevail in this new 3rd district.
I don't think so. I think that it's going to be tough when you factor out Isla Vista to hold on to that 3rd district seat for a traditional liberal supervisor. And I think that it's probably going to go 3-2 the other way. And one could argue it should. Santa Maria is the largest city in the county. There's much more population growth in that area. So I don't think Joan Hartman can do that. I think it would take definitely somebody who's more moderate,
You
like
agree with that?
a Brooks Firestone type, not him
Well,
specifically, but
I
someone.
would say that they have a fighting chance, but I say what Joan gets, so she lost Guadalupe, what she gets, and she lost Isla Vista, but what she has now is the city of Lompoc, which is pretty democratic in terms of its voting majority. We'll see who turns out. And it has it has a big chunk of Goleta. And I think Joan can win that depending on who is running against her. If it is Bruce Porter again, I think she's going to clean his clock. If it's somebody else, we'll
I'd like to remind you of a certain Santa Barbara City Council member who's from Lompoc. So I'll just leave it at that.
But there's two of them.
Oh, I'm not counting Eric, even though, yes, we know he moved there.
Hasn't she really betrayed her Lompoc political values by now? Josh, I know you got to run, but before you do, I want to ask you about the assembly seat too, if you're still around. But Jade and I had a conversation this week about via email because our texts don't work. I don't know why.
She blocked you. Just
I
kidding.
think Jerry blocked me.
Citizen Macaw. She watched Citizen Macaw, the
Oh.
documentary about which every person in the media political complex in Santa Barbara should watch to get a good sense of history. And she said it was fascinating to see you, Nick,
Uh-oh.
and myself 15 years younger. And Jade, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that Josh has aged the most. Did you not?
She said Josh got the fattest. That's probably what she said. I love watching Citizen Macaw because Nick Welsh, you're hilarious. I mean, you are so funny, and forget, I don't mean to offend you, but it's before your cancer, and it's just like, wow. I mean, this was like Nick. It was so good. You were
before she sued you. So
you were the heart. You were the heart of that, and of course Jerry. And your wife. Linda. Wow, it was so touching, and I had a small role in that, but yeah, that was those were some good times, and everybody should watch that. I still have that shirt, by the way. It's a little tight, but I still have it. It's blue.
15 years. Okay, real quick on redistricting again. So this new assembly district that allegedly is going to be Santa Barbara only and a little bit of San Luis Obispo, they're still messing around with the state redistricting. But what's the latest on whether Greg Hart will run or not run in that? Whoever, I'll just throw that one out there. What are we hearing?
I'll just go real quick and then whoever else. But as far as I understand, the maps are almost final, but not quite. The ink is not dry, and I think there's a deadline of sometime between Christmas and New Year's.
Right.
And so Greg is waiting, and once it's official, then he'll have to decide. I think what I'm told is he's legitimately torn. Like he doesn't have like, I'm going to do this, and definitely when it comes out, there's pros and cons. He probably could enjoy a nice rest of his life as a supervisor, but Greg is big time. I mean, he's very intellectual. He's really smart. He's very popular. He knows his stuff. He's lived it. He could do some good work in Sacramento. So I think everybody would love for him to go there so they can run for the supervisor seat. So I don't know. That's sort of my take. I think Greg will probably run for assembly. I think, he knows he can win that and he's capable. I don't know.
You agree with that, Nick?
I kind of lean that way. I think Greg has had an itch to play at that level. I think he has a rare opportunity right now. He's got a board that actually gets along, and they really work amazingly well together. Even Bob Nelson, who's the most conservative, everybody has strikingly good relationships, and they're trying. They've got themselves sort of wired in. So for the time being, I think you can get some stuff done.
Yeah. I'm impressed with Nelson. I really am.
Yeah.
He's not one of these conservatives who's like against the government per se. I mean, he does want to do deals and negotiations and compromise and all these dirty words in Washington that people don't want to do. Jade, as you cover the Board of Supervisors, do you agree with Nick's assessment that this is a well-oiled machine, that everyone's playing nice over there together?
Definitely. I mean, I am fairly new, so I haven't really seen a board that didn't work well together. So there's nothing I can really compare it to, except I was there, at the end of Peter Adams' term as supervisor, and it wasn't hostile or anything with him, but there were just a lot more disagreements, kind of heated arguments, almost like a little less respect for each other than I think I see now. Like the supervisors now will disagree now and then, but for the most part, I think they're all very calm toned, and Nelson, he really seems thoughtful about everything. They're considerate. I think they do work really well together. Sometimes I
Sure.
wish they argued more. It'd make my job watching
Well,
them
they,
a little
they
more
did
fun.
argue about this juvenile justice thing, did they not, this week? I mean, Nick, can you sort of sort that out, the change that's happening there?
You asking me?
Yeah.
I didn't see any real disagreement. I was surprised that there wasn't more. This is a proposal. We're going to bring some of the more serious and violent juvenile offenders from statewide facilities and bring them back to Santa Barbara. And it's a plan, which is really, it's not lock them up and throw away the key. It's how do we salvage a human being out of somebody who has been traumatized and brutalized and has played some of that trauma and brutality forward. And how do you rehabilitate them as a human being? And I was expecting maybe a little bit more, what is this sort of feel-good stuff? Steve Lavanino from the 5th District said, this was contrary to where I sort of my starting point, but I really understand that, this is a life that, these people are young and they have a lot of life left in them, and we should try to, save what we can. So I was struck by the fact that there wasn't disagreement on that one.
Yeah.
But again, there wasn't a lot of, the dollars and cents were not discussed.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Real quick. So Jade, what's going on with your fellowship? Where do things stand, and what are you working on?
So I guess I'm almost at the halfway mark. It's due at the end of March. I'm kind of in the data collection phase right now. So just gathering all my data. That's been kind of hard, especially with the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. People aren't as available, but I'm making good progress. I have my 3 stories finalized and somewhat outlined.
Remind us what the series is going to focus on.
So I'm focusing on the lack of acute mental health patient beds in Santa Barbara County, and I'll be kind of looking at how that impacts the emergency rooms and some of these lower level options of care, like the co-response team and the crisis stabilization units, if those have any effect on the demand for beds. And
these are all issues near and dear to your heart, Nick.
Well, I think it's great you're doing this. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a big deal. And then finally, Nick, give me a minute on this $5,000 bonus thing for housing the homeless program that you happened upon this week. That was kind of interesting.
No, it's interesting. When everybody talks about the homeless, we got to get them off the street. Well, we're getting them into a motel. Okay, well, that runs out. Where do we put them then? And there's no there. And so the housing authority has put together this program. How do we get landlords to rent to homeless people? And you would think that's very counterintuitive. Why would a landlord want to have a bunch, all of the drama that may or may not entail? And so initially they had a bonus. I think it was $1,500. It was a signing bonus. So Jerry, if you rent to this homeless person, the first homeless person you rent to, we're going to give you $1,500. Well, that wasn't enough, so they bumped it up now to $5,000. So that's a one-time, your first, sweetener. And then after that, for every additional person, you get a bonus, if I remember this right, of 2,500. And then they help you out with the security deposit. So what they're doing is the housing market is so intensely competitive. You've got all the UCSB students, city college students, you name it. Prices are off the charts. You got 0% vacancy. The only way you're going to be able to get anybody's foot in the door who's coming off the streets is with a big subsidy. And so they're making some progress. The guy I talked to who's in charge of this, he says that, we've gotten about 40 people in the last, month. This has been going on since September.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I agree with you. They are making progress, at least to judge from your reporting on it, which is, you cover it more than anybody. And I mentioned that because we're off next week for Christmas Eve, but we will be back on New Year's Eve when our esteemed panelists and a number of surprise guests will be talking about the biggest news stories of 2021. And I think progress on homelessness might qualify in the top tier of that. So we will miss you next week. We will see you all in 2 weeks. So Merry Christmas, if I'm still allowed to say that, to everyone. Jade Martinez-Pogue, thank you so much for joining us. Nick, as ever, thanks for being with us and drilling down on some of this stuff. This is a good show. We covered a lot of ground and a lot of wonky stuff, so you could hear the clicks off all around the Central Coast. But you guys have a great holiday, and we'll see you on New Year's Eve.
You too. Jay, nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.